I look at that as, reintroducing yourself to a person and kind of starting from there, because I always look at that as at the bottom of the ladder, working your way up. But it is definitely showing that somebody is wanting to get something going with you for sure here. You coming in as the Empress, it's the same feeling for me. And God bless it if I could fucking remember anything. But it has the same feeling here of you being like the mother figure. With the Page of Cups on their side, I do think that you're dealing with somebody who's really naive about the way that they feel about you. I think that you come from a much different place. But I also feel like, you are like showing them, teaching them almost. I don't see this as like you tempting anybody. I don't feel like that with the Empress. I just think that a lot of you are coming from a really good place, whether you're male or female. But the fact that they're showing the Page of Cups, I look at that as purity for sure. Communication of emotions. But, it's still being very naive about what you're feeling. Now, you move into a place, though, out of, the Empress, where you're trying to kind of guide them and show them some understanding. I think with the Eight of Swords, it's not so much that you don't see a way forward, but your thinking is in a place where you're like, I don't see how things can move forward if you continue to kind of push it, because there really is no reason for that. With the Eight of Wands, it's fast movement, right? And besides that, though, this is communication. But the thing is that you aren't together. That's what I'm getting from this. And you may be like the mother figure, whether you're male or female. I don't see this as how you're seeing them with the Empress. But the Eight of Wands for me is never face-to-face communication, never face-to-face. But I think that the communication that's happening there is about, wanting to move really quickly. And I think that you come from a place of, wisdom and understanding with the Empress, but also being, very caring and nurturing and giving to them. Even though you're dealing with somebody that's like, it's almost like they're off to the races, but it's not like a Knight of Wands type of feeling. They're totally being led by their emotions, but you're not together. And that may be why you're looking at it as the Eight of Swords, besides the fact that they're like all these ideas, and it's like they're talking to you about way in the future almost. And you're like, no, I just don't see how that's possible right now. And I think that with the Ace of Swords, that's kind of what you're trying to communicate to them. Like, let's look at the truth here. But they're not wanting to hear it with the Nine of Wands. It's almost like, no, I can't, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to be put off. I don't want to be put on the back burner, but that's not what you're trying to do here. I think that you're just being a little bit more realistic about where this relationship is going and what you need to do to get it to where you want it to be. So that's kind of how I look at the Nine of Wands in this situation. Now, you come out beautifully. I mean, beautifully. Look at these aces, right? So with the Ace of Cups, absolutely, this is like a new love for a lot of you, but I think that for a long time, you kind of looked at yourself as like, the more experienced one in terms of dealing with emotions and what it means to, enjoy a relationship, but not only that, but what it takes to kind of be in a place where you're comfortable. And I don't know that a lot of you are comfortable with the way the situation is right now, because I really don't think that you're together. But anyway, the Two of Cups, though, there is that understanding, but you're bringing that understanding. And I think that they're trying to see what you are telling them with the Ace of Swords, because it's like, for you, you see everything clearly, even though you're showing the Eight of Swords. At the same time, you're like, well, let's be realistic about this, especially with the Page of Pentacles. But let's look at the truth of the situation. The Ace of Cups and the Ace of Pentacles, though, to me, ultimately is what wins out here. Because a new beginning with this love situation for a lot of you. And I think that you kind of get past this feeling of, I don't see how it's possible. And definitely there's a want to have that opportunity on both sides. But the Ace of Pentacles is, this is something that needs to be long lasting, and again, being realistic about what can happen in the future, because the Ace of Pentacles is always going to lead to something that is going to be persistent in your life, for a long time to come. It's more than just the emotions that you're feeling right now. You're like literally planning for the future. I think that they're being a little bit more pushy about it though. So I almost feel like rather than being the Queen of Swords, if this makes sense, you're coming in as the Empress. But I think that for some of you, you may have gone through divorce or have been like on your own for a while. But I do think that you're dealing with somebody that isn't, close to you right now. It's like they're somewhere else. There isn't a whole lot of physical contact that's actually happening. All right. So here's what I'm kind of getting from this. I don't like this because, it may end up being like a missed opportunity if the emotions get too like in the way of, like I said, progress that's going to lead you to something that's, going to be stable for you, because you, I feel like, are coming from a place of experience where they're not, if that makes sense. So with the Knight of Cups, first of all, and then looking at the Four of Swords, I think that for a lot of you, it's not so much that you're wanting to cut off communication with them. I think that what's happening here is that there's like a break between the two of you. There's going to be like a moment of silence, so to speak, right? But then you kind of get back to this place where there's at least some kind of understanding, because with the Two of Cups, you're talking about reciprocating emotions, right? Seeing things the same way, beyond like the soulmate connection, things like that, and the emotional tie. But for some reason, there's like this break, this moment of silence. It's not a ghosting situation at all. But with the Knight of Cups, it may be because they're just being, too emotional, and a little bit too carried away. That's kind of how I see this. But clearly here, they're coming at you. And like I said, it's off to the races here with the emotions, but not in a Knight of Wands type of way. What I don't like is the Devil and the Queen of Pentacles. I think that, given that we're looking at this new beginning, whatever, negative things are attached to this person and their emotions and the way that they kind of carry themselves, I think for you, it's like, I don't need that. I think that you are wanting to be secure with this. With the Queen of Pentacles, I always look at her as like, I don't need this. I don't need anybody. I can take care of things on my own. But we're also talking about a sense of self or security with yourself and what you're doing, right? So, and I don't think it's about self-esteem. I think that you're kind of looking at them like, you clearly here have some issues. I don't think that you're getting involved in a bad relationship. Believe me, if that were the case, I would tell you, but there's something wrong with them emotionally. And this is getting into, a darker place here. But then we're also talking about somebody that needs to like stop acting in this way because it's not healthy. Because I almost feel like the all or nothing kind of feeling here, especially with the Nine of Wands. But you're not that way. It's not that way. Or you could simply be dealing with somebody here, male or female, possibly earth sign, that just has a lot of shit attached to them and unhealthy attachments that they need to get rid of before, they're kind of like off and going with how they feel about you, and that could have to do with another person. And it's not good. It's something that ultimately could tip this cup over and then just make it like not worth it. But again, I'm still looking at, how do we kind of like start over or start this? But with justice coming out, I feel like it's something that, they need to kind of like get right in their lives before, this can be realized, because I feel like this is more important than kind of what is going on between the both of you. Now, with the King of Cups here, we could be talking about somebody who needs to go through a divorce or needs to go through a separation, and that may be why there isn't a whole lot of contact between the two of you, but he is definitely becoming more emotionally available, but also understands that, You know, something needs to happen here. And I think that that's where the understanding is coming through. You know, now he or she is seeing your point of view and realizing that, okay, you know, I'm here. I've gained some wisdom from what you are telling me. Now I know that I need to get rid of this, you know. And like I said, it's like, it's not something that they're doing to you. I think that this is something clearly that you already know about, whatever the devil is. But I do think that it may have to do with another person, with justice being here. They're really trying to get it out of their life. You know, so I don't think that they're like needing to make amends for anything that they've done to you, if that makes sense. I just think that you're dealing with somebody that needs to finalize a divorce, or they need to take care of this and get the procedure going. And I think that that's what will open you up to this feeling of the Ace of Cups, where it's more about, you know, the new emotional experience rather than being practical, because that's ultimately where you lead. You know, so this to me feels like it's like on the edge of the table. At any minute, it could just like, and it's done. Okay, so when I look at very soon, I think that a lot of times we get involved in situations with people where we need to look at, you know, what are we really wanting? We need to get a little bit more clear about what we expect in our relationships, or what we expect out of the person that we're dealing with. And I think that that's kind of what's happening here. I think that for a lot of you, somebody is trying to come back and apologize to you for the way that they've been. And I think that they're wanting you to kind of look past the past, if that makes sense. So when you're looking at the Page of Wands, this is about looking past appearances and getting caught up in the passion. You know, it's all new and it's really nice, but, you know, it can show that somebody is wanting you to look past how they are or how they were. So with the Emperor, and a lot of people seem to be dealing with this, you could be dealing with somebody who's, you know, full of passion and drive and misdirected at that. But I think that for a lot of you, you either fell in love with them or they fell in love with you. It's one of the two here. But somebody is like all over the place with their passion. You know, I don't... It's very rare to see Aquarius get so wrapped up in the way that they feel that they're not thinking, you know, clearly about what is going on, because it's really about the fixed thought, right? So, you know, there always has to be like this logic and reason behind why, you know, you feel the way that you do, but it could be because of this person's personality with the Emperor that you kind of get caught up. You know, because like I said, with the Queens, it's like what you're internalizing. Water, male, female, doesn't matter. Okay. But like I said, it's like they want you to look past something, because obviously they're wanting to apologize to you here with the Five of Cups. Like, I'm sorry. You know, I didn't see all of, you know, the feelings that you had, I had, whatever. You know, I'm not like that anymore. You know, I think that that's what they're trying to get you to see. So then you move into the Four of Cups, though, where things get to be routine and the excitement is kind of gone. And I think that it's funny, because you may be dealing with a person that's like this, but it's because of them and, you know, kind of falling into the same thing over again that you become the Empress. You know, and it's not that you're trying to tempt anything in your life here. I think that for a lot of you, you're just like, you know what? I want something more. I want something better. I'm, you know, looking at myself with more value. That's kind of how I look at that with the Empress coming out. And then the Eight of Wands. I don't necessarily feel like that's you. I think that that's somebody else that's been kind of like peeking in on your relationships after them. Because like I've always said, with the Three of Cups and the Nine of Swords, those two are very specifically about getting back together. One's easier than the other. The Three of Cups would be about, you know, mending the broken heart and everything being okay, right? So it's a good situation. The problem is that the reason why this may be happening is because this person may be, you know, looking at your relationship going, you know, and trying to like infiltrate, or looking at, you know, you possibly getting involved with somebody else and wanting to step in really quickly. But the thing is it's the same thing over again. And that's kind of how I feel about the Four of Cups. With the Eight of Wands, I think for you, you just kind of like enjoy it. It is what it is. And I fucking hate that saying, but I think that that's what you ultimately look at it as. So I do think that there may have been, a lot of love for the person that you're dealing with here. I think that, you may have been like split up or broke up and are getting back together. But I think the reason why this is happening is because they've been looking in on what you're doing. I don't like the Five of Wands. It bothers me because it's like, what is this person thinking about? If they're so like curious about what you're doing, who you're with, things like that, But I don't think that they want you to see it. And it's not like ill intent or anything like that, but it's almost like they can't stand seeing you with somebody else, if that makes sense. But nothing is, really all that great with them. Looking at the Four of Cups. And like I said, I think that you kind of go back into a place with the Empress where you're like, I've kind of learned a lesson from dealing with you. So this is where I'm at now. I'll enjoy the moments, but it's not anything fantastical, if that makes sense. All right. I don't think that they were the person that you thought they were, because I don't think that the King of Swords is you in this situation. I think that that's kind of like the person that you're dealing with. So I don't like the King of Swords here. And whether they're male, female, another air sign, I don't believe that that's you. I believe that with the Knight of Wands, that's kind of how you felt about the initial, start of the relationship, so to speak. But I think that you're realizing that this person isn't exactly, what you thought. I think that you kind of like got carried away with the passion here, but you're starting to see this person for who they are. And I don't think that you can force yourself to continue to make a connection. So with the King of Swords, I think that what you're finding out about this person is that they're lacking in an emotional connection with you. I don't like him. He drives me nuts, but there's something that they're not feeling. Okay, and I'm not seeing anything here where we're talking about third-party situations or anything like that. And I say that because you got the old woman peeking in the window. It's weird. It's creepy to me. But I usually see the King of Swords as somebody who's lacking in emotional connection. So then, like I said, you move into this place with the Four of Swords where, you can't force the connection. It just can't be forced anymore. And the Ten of Pentacles is about self-reflection, how you see yourself in this relationship. It may otherwise be a secure thing, in a very abundant relationship, right? Where, the two of you together create a lot. But is that really who you are? And that's what this is about. A lot of people miss the mirror that's there. And that's what this one is. You're looking at yourself now going, I don't know. I don't know if this is me. So you may be kind of questioning that, but the question of security and stability may absolutely come up with this. Now, the Six of Cups, this is definitely you going back to the past and looking at how things were with this person. They're not the same person that they used to be. And with the Moon here, it's just like you're getting caught up in the fantasies of the past, but, are you actually able to kind of live that out, right? Now, I also look at the Moon, though, as, two people who are fantasizing about each other, but is it being realized? Or are we just caught up in the daydream or the illusion, so to speak, right? And then the Six of Wands. Okay, so I think what's happening here is, first of all, with the Hermit, you get caught up in the passion of the relationship, but you're realizing that something is lacking from this person. And that's why I think the King of Swords is sitting here. Again, whether you're dealing with male or female, doesn't matter. But with the Hermit, it's you looking at this going, is this really what I wanted? And I think that a lot of you may be taking a distance from this person, or maybe there isn't a whole lot of connection anymore. But it's not like it's temporary. But I think for you, it brings up deeper questions almost of what you really want. How do you really see a relationship? Moving into the Queen of Pentacles, I think that for a lot of you, I really don't need this person to please me in any which way. I can kind of do that on my own, because that's what she represents here. But I also think that you may go into a place where it's like, okay, I'm not really, I can't make the connection right now. I think I'm going to place my focus and attention into something else. And for a lot of you, it could be, your career. That, or this is what you're realizing about this person. They are lacking in an emotional connection. And it's not to say that they don't have it. It's just that they're not showing it to you. And then moving into the Queen of Pentacles, it may be that their focus and attention is somewhere else. And I think that, you may be trying here, but the connection just can't be made. And again, otherwise it's, one of those relationships where this may have been in your life for a while, or you may have been with this person for a while. But again, we're talking about you looking at who you are in this relationship. Now, coming out of this, though, with the Six of Wands and looking at the Six of Cups, if you're looking back at the passion of the past, it would make sense that, I don't think that you're playing games here. I think that, you're wanting attention, and you're trying to get that. You're putting yourself out there. Let's realize the fantasy here. How do you really feel, and kind of putting all of that out in the open, so to speak. But there clearly is something, though, from the past that needs to be, healed and moved on from.